Welcome back to the Torque Test channel and to PUSHY, our wrench-turning robot with an unquenchable appetite for pushing the limits of tools and finding out precisely where those limits are. Reversible ratcheting combo wrenches. They're expensive. We're talking from $78 a piece from Lowe's and a random Amazon brand through $17 a piece for Icon, $31 a pop for Mac Tools, and $57 a piece for Snap-on. We've tested the open end of combination wrenches before and double box end ratcheting wrenches as well, and we plan to buy more of those at some point to add on. But today, all new to the channel, we have your go-to ratcheting combination wrenches, and might as well do that to its fullest with reversible ones, the ones more oftenly broken around here. So we're going to test how well the open ends of these tools grip on common grade fasteners, how smooth each of these ratcheting mechanisms are, and how strong each ratcheting wrench is. All ranked on our leaderboards, including how much bigger or smaller these wrenches are on average to determine which is functionally the best that you can buy. With more ratchets than we ever tested in an episode, 10 brands, Kobalt, Tekton, Williams, including special non-slip designs from Gearwrench, Capri, icons that are a little bit different than their own other set, Snap-on Flink Drive Plus, and more. Let's get into it. In order of price, this is the Kobalt reversible ratcheting wrench set from Lowe's for $50 or $7.14 a piece. Surprisingly cheaper than an Amazon brand we bought, but also this set skips several sizes, focusing on some of the more used ones depending on what type of vehicle you have. And this type of sticker label is always pretty annoying, so it's going to wear this the rest of the episode. The low profile slider switch for reverse and forward is pretty neat, not in the way, and it measures about average for each ratchet today in head thickness, diameter, and open end thickness across everything that we've purchased, which is to say, pretty good. It's not oversized when trying to fit it into spaces. What isn't so good is the back drag on the ratcheting head. We use this meter to measure that in both forward and reverse, and essentially 10 plus is really bad. 2 to 3 would be the best we've ever seen, and the Kobalt gets 9 in one direction and about 8 in the other direction, so 8.5 for back drag. Not the best, and back drag can be really inconvenient at times to downright make the tool useless at other times, as instead of advancing the fastener forward, it can just do this do-si-do back and forth, while other lower back drag ratchets still get you where you need to go when that resistance is low on the threads. Let's see how it performs though. In this case, we're using the slugs of a 17mm hex made to the same class specifications of grade 5 hardware, and also black metric class 8.8 stuff you find all throughout a vehicle. Then PUSHY turns this wrench the same way every time, each wrench inserted in the same direction, and the more the tool can grab onto that hex, the more torque it's going to register before slipping, making no further progress after that. According to the engineering standard ASME B107.100-2010, you want to see at least 139 newton meters to meet the standard. That's on a more hardened hex. It would be nice though if what engineers demand we also see when we're working on these cars in person, and the Kobalt's gonna make it up to 130 newton meters on the dot, newton meters being what this instrument measures in, and that compares to 94%, basically how we're ranking these here, 94% of the standard. Is that bad for this test? We're gonna have to see, and gonna be maxing out the ratcheting end as well coming up. Up next is Spur, or basically an Amazon example of these tools. This is a whole $96 for a set, but is a larger set, basically going up from $7.14 a wrench to $8 now. And this wrench is quite loud for a ratcheting wrench. But that doesn't take away from what turns out to be, in this case, a pretty smooth operation. We're seeing like 5 in either direction, which is rather good. Surprised to see that. It also measures average, no secret tricks here like non-slip jaws or a thicker wrench to try to get grippier numbers. Let's see how it does. The Amazon guy is going to slip, like all of these eventually will, but some will be much later than others, believe it or not, based on these two results so far. This coming in at 134.9 or 97% of the ASME standard. So far, looking pretty similar. And up next is Gearwrench at $9.92 a wrench, $119 a set. This is from their latest 90-tooth set with their filled-in color size markings, which is kind of neat. While the Kobalt set was made in Taiwan, the last guy and this Gearwrench made in China, like a fair amount of Apex Tool Group stuff this day and age. This also has the sticky label syndrome thing going on, and while 90-tooth, yeah, they must be big teeth. Subjectively, the loudest ratcheting mechanism on the entire day by these ears. And that clanking appears to come at a cost. Thought this was just measuring in the wrong direction of the ratchet, but it does take much more force to click over. A reading of 12 in either direction, that's the worst to date on the channel. This does come with some extra bells and whistles, though. A non-slip jaw, I call this sort of design a tabletop, as it doesn't have the grooves and slits. You might often see it has raised and lowered portions. And each dimension on this tool is larger than average. Bulkier box end, bigger diameter head, and much thicker on the open end, which we've seen before on Gearwrench wrenches on the channel. 9.2 millimeters on this one. The average is around 7.8, and the most common being 8 millimeter. Let's see what that can afford it. The mixture of both a non-slip design and some chunky chompers on this wrench leads to some results. Some more material being turning with potentially more grip. We see a full 131% of the standard, 182.4 Newton meters. Good stuff. That's incredibly good. Didn't want to push out or cam either, just turned on it, which is what you want to see, taking a lot of material with it before it would slip. We'll have to see how that thick ratcheting end fares shortly. Okay, and up next in order of price is Tekton at $160 a set, $11.42 a wrench. Tekton is going to be the first to offer noticeably more of an offset on the ratcheting end, like some of these have, which is nice for avoiding obstructions when you're ratcheting back and forth. Has a matte chrome finish, it's made in Taiwan, and overall just slightly oversized versus the average, mainly due to the wrench head being mid 33 millimeters instead of low 32 millimeters, and its ratcheting smoothness, which can very much play a part in using a wrench, is about a reading of 7 here. Not bad, but also not amazing. Standard open end design. Let's see how it does. The Tekton is going to push things up to 151.1 Newton meters, which is good for 109% of the standard. Over the engineering standard using common grade 5 class 8.8 type hardware that you're often going to see. Can't be mad at that. And here we have Williams. This is sort of their Taiwan line of tools, not US made. Otherwise, it would probably be further up their price list than the $14.42 a wrench or $173 a set this is. They do list Taiwan on the wrench, but all of its markings are lasered, no stamping even for the size, which is a rare thing to see. This is a funky wrench. Let me explain. Open end is by far the slimmest so far. 6.7 millimeters compared to typically 7.8 to 8 millimeters, which is going to be more common. But that ratcheting box end is also by far the thickest now, a full 12 millimeters compared to 10.5 being the most common. Real odd balance of design here, and that big chunky ratchet end is both quiet and super smooth. We're talking at a level of a reading 3 here, just 3. Very smooth, low resistance, 80 tooth mechanism this thing has. None of that's going to help though when it comes to open end grip, which may not be the priority of why you're buying a ratcheting wrench, and it's why it's only one ranked test on our leaderboards coming up. Ratcheting will be more significant overall, but here we're going to see just 115.8 or 83% of the target standard, aka not very great. And that's pretty obviously due to, I think, the open end being impossibly thin to be keeping up with the rest of these here. They're USA made super combo wrenches, I believe, are thicker and have unique jaws. We've tested their standard ones before. They're very good. So if and when doing this again, I think that's probably what we would try out. Okay, and up next we have something sort of in a similar vein, Blackhawk by Proto. Blackhawk is their sometimes Taiwan tool arm of US Proto Tools in a similar fashion to Snap-on, who has sockets made by Williams, and Williams having Taiwan tools as well. Everything about this wrench is bang on, nothing wrong. Ratchet feel, reverse switch, sizes, nothing's going to be out of the ordinary. Even the back drag on the mechanism, we're going to be seeing a reading of 5 here, one way, and 6 the other way, 5.5 total, right in the middle of where we see this stuff. Let's take a look at that open end grip. The Blackhawk, got to be careful with your diction on that one, is going to put up 124.5 Newton meters, or just 90% of our target here. Probably not your choice of wrench on things that you have open end access on, it would seem. Even with a perfect swing that starts fully seated, the wrench wants to start to push off that hex and climb up the jaws. Not doing it any favors in the points. Alright, and next up we have Capri, and these are our first long pattern wrenches, which explains some of its $200 set price, or $16.67 a wrench. This uses their own anti-slip jaw design, which also incorporates into that a V cutout at the base, which doesn't do much from a physics perspective, we often point out, but does place that fastener deeper into the jaw, which could have some benefits maybe, and also what they call their ultra smooth 120 tooth mechanism on this thing, which is cool from a tooth count perspective and degree of arc swing, but ultra smooth. Let's see, I'd call this like a high tooth count, just good, like a decent mechanism here, not ultra smooth when you are measuring something like this, registering in at a 7. Let's check out that non-slip action though. The Capri turning on this hex made to grade 5, matching automotive bolts, does not want to let go. It's just pure grip. That V-jaw, as we'll see, does push that hex out of it a little bit, as they all seem to, but this is good for 172.3, 124%. What's impressive about that is the whole wrench is average sized and 15 to 16% thinner open end jaw than that thick Gearwrench listed at the top. So even with that hex moving out a bit, it sort of digs into the sides and holds on for a very good showing here. Good stuff. And here up coming next, we have the Harbor Freight Icon, which are extra long, even longer than the Capri. This is a highly requested tool for us to buy on the channel, not just because of the whole snap-on debate thing about their standard combination wrenches, but for some reason, and that reason being that they're made in different factories in Taiwan, the ratcheting set is a different design than their other non-slip combination wrenches that don't ratchet. And it's $17 a wrench, $170 a set. These don't have the everything but the kitchen sink sort of thing that we're used to seeing on their just chrome solid combo wrenches. This is more of a tabletop ramp style, which can be nice, doesn't chew up bolt heads as much in my experience, but does this design grip as famously well as their other one. Its ratcheting end, which is why you're probably buying it, is fairly decent. Besides measuring within the normal wrench on both ends sort of spectrum, we're getting a 6 reading here, sometimes just over 6, but on the other direction it's sometimes just under 6, so 6, that's not bad at all. Let's see how it does. The Icon is sort of a grip and rip one for sure. It digs into the sides like the Capri does and just makes it work. Despite not being the aggressive looking thing that their standard combo wrenches are, 166 Newton meters, 119%, up there for sure. It's still grabbing on this thing at the end, just not as much as it made in peak, which was 166. Not looking bad at all. Now $17 a wrench is a fair amount, but what if we just about doubled that with this Mac Tools Precision Torque ratcheting wrench for $31.25 a piece, or $375 a set. And that price is certainly not by the pound, as it's back to a normal length wrench, and dimensionally, this made in Taiwan tool is just smaller at every turn. The ratcheting head thickness, the diameter of that ratcheting head, both smaller than average, and the open end is damn near the slimmest on the day, only 0.1 millimeters thicker than that Williams, which was razor thin, 6.8 millimeters. So while its back drag is pretty normal, decent, same as the Icon, a 6, not the lowest, but not the highest, it's not going to slam dunk this whole turn-in stuff with that open end thickness. We've tested precision torque wrenches before, they're quite good. I own a small set, they feel great, but these ratcheting ones could not overcome the thinness on this end. Retested it to make sure. Pushy's spot on as usual though, even tested them in reverse to show that, since sometimes people think there's a difference there, but when turned the same, they make the same. Wasn't in the cards, 117.8 Newton meters, 85% of what we're looking for here. It's not that thin wrenches are bad in any way, but if they're not advertising it as being a super slim wrench and you buy it as your only set, using it on a tie rod or something, well, it's gonna slip sooner than some others you could have bought. Okay, and last up on the day before we start breaking some ratcheting mechanisms in order of price, it's usually going to be, Snap-on in their Flank Drive Plus reversible ratcheting wrenches, made in the USA, $57.50 a wrench and $575 a set. I would tell you otherwise, folks, if it were true, but damn if this thing isn't butter smooth. You can just audibly hear it compared to, say, the Icon here. You don't even really need a gauge for this, but should you get one, this is what it would tell you. A reading of 2. It requires more force to wind back a wristwatch than the amount of drag this thing has. Now, is that $575 smooth? That's up for debate and up to you, but it seems to do well at this, and with a smaller head than usual as well. In fact, both the thinnest ratcheting mechanism at 10 millimeters and the smallest head diameter at 30.7, both well under average. You can visually see the difference here, sort of A to B, that extra space being taken up. All with a bang on average open end thickness, 7.9 millimeters, so all the things you want skimped on as far as where the meat is and there where you want it. So let's see, this is their Flank Drive Plus design and has some extra grip and design technology baked into it that we've seen on their standard combination Flank Drive Plus do very well. And on their even pricier ratcheting wrenches, we see 179 newton meters, that's 129%, taking over from the Capri as the best scoring sort of normal jaw thickness wrench, and not far off from the Gearwrench, that's a wide boy and non-slip, looking pretty good. Overall, good stuff, but also not miles off examples that are also good like Icon and Capri. Alright, and time for some real destruction. When, as in, at what point do these ratcheting ends break and who's on top? The ASME target for what we're after here is 267. Ideally, since this is a hardened hex, no slipping, just going to be breaking these things. We'd love to be well above that, like 125 to 150% plus for professional tools. In this case, the Kobalt's going to come in with close to that number, 260.7, 98%. Floss per Amazon example up next. This thing is going to do pretty good, 337.8 newton meters, which is a lot, 127% of ASME, not bad. The Gearwrench has a problem with bending. Not that it's gonna do poorly at all in this case, just that its ratcheting head is the largest in diameter on the day, while having one of the thinnest arms to turn it with. It pops up here at 377, which can happen. You'll see us clamp these down coming up as well, but it's the arm that's bending in this case, and it doesn't improve on this, just bends it more. 377 though, 141%, that is high. Not as high though as Tekton, whose ratchet arm and ratcheting head are well paired in size. It's going to say 450 here, but that's around where we like to double check if this thing is still ratcheting, which we do for each wrench at around this stage, and it is no longer working at this point, just all bound up. Going back, it is right here where it cracked the pawl inside, 406 newton meters, still way up there in torque. Up next is Williams, and with the thickest ratcheting head on the day, she was not going to be going down without a fight. At 430 or so, we checked that it's still working, no pop or dings heard yet though, and it's still functioning forward and reverse just fine. The Williams is going to just push the limits up to 464.9 and then drop off, and then boom. It cracked the case housing of the whole ratchet head, and about 6 parts came shooting off in different directions across the shop. This is getting pretty fun. Let's do another one. The Blackhawk is another Taiwanese tank, and it gets well up there, 430s, before checking that it's still functional, which it is, and then maxing it out, which it's able to do in fantastic fashion. This one not only has basically sparks and a flame front, but shot a good 20 plus feet across the shop, sliding on the ground and hitting a wall, otherwise it would probably gone further. 455.4 newton meters, 171% of the ASME standard. If 140 to 150% is the goal for a lot of professional brands, we're certainly well up there now. And on the chopping block now is Capri. We're in a bit of whatever you'd call the opposite of a rut here. With all this torque talent, the Capri gets to about 430, then it still cycles fine, so back on she goes. Then just past there up to 440, the length of the arm mixed with the offset of this tool causes it to slip off. Thought it was for sure broken, but it still ratchets, so it gets the vice grip clamp of assured destruction to see if it's going to be the arm that bends or the ratchet head that breaks first. And yeah, that will do the trick. 466.5 newton meters, the best yet, 175%. Nice. The Icon's up next. Was curious to see how this one would do for sure. The Icon gets up to 433, where some inspection is done to make sure it's still working, and it's not. Stuck in place and won't go forward or backwards now. Was working at 300 when we checked it, but this clink sound at 423 surely did it in. Still very good, all said, and 158%. The Mac Tools has a strong I-beam-like shape and is going to help it get up here and kill the ratcheting head at 393.2, at which point it's no longer progressing. The head is just sort of stuck and wedged into place now 147%. And lastly, we have the Snap-on Fling Drive Plus, a $575 set, but also Snap-on has historically topped our torque to failure charts, despite their small heads and sheer grip strength on open ends as well. And here, it's not going to do that by the looks of it. It slips up its arm at 316.6, but there was more going on there. You see how it stopped at 316.6, then kept rotating, then shot that arm up. It was already broken and then just making it worse. This is due to a crack of fissure that started at the head near one of the two through bolts in it. Clamping it in place is enough to show the full results of that at a lower 306 Newton meter. That crack becomes a full form, broken open nearly in half, and second least amount of torque on the day, 119%. This thing really blew apart and much lower than we would have thought. Good enough to pass an engineering standard, you gotta say that much, but maybe not the best bet if you abuse your tools, but the same stats that put this guy at the top last time, helping it score up here with ratcheting flex heads, 200, 180%. Now on a non-flex head ratcheting tool, it's only 119%. And also interestingly, these Cabo-made ratcheting double box ends from Icon with 144% average. Now we're seeing the opposite of that Snap-on, an improvement up to 158% on this one. So they're sort of going different directions on the rankings. And when we rank each of these results, that's going to look like this. A number 1 being first for best, 9 or 10 being the worst, and similar results getting naturally a similar ranking. You can see how they also get ranked based on size. A slimmer wrench on either end is useful, but doesn't help it in turning torque, so is rewarded for that here, or in Gearwrench's case, penalized for being an average of 107% of the other wrenches across the 3 measurements we took. This all totals less being best, 6.67 for Kobalt, 5.67 for Amazon, 4.67 for Gearwrench, and for Tekton, and for Williams, and for Blackhawk as well. All of these get 4.67. The Tekton being the one of this group that did poorly nowhere, I think. Then 2.67 for Capri, 3.67 for Icon, Mac Tools 5 flat, and Snap-on 4 flat. Which all looks like this, with Capri out in first by some margin, looking to be the best buy overall. That open end works well, and it's really hard to kill overall. It's also not too large, measured anywhere, and each wrench costs less than each Icon wrench as well. But the Icon did pretty well too. Second place, well done, and then Snap-on. If you'd like to see any brand or type of wrench added to any of our rankings, let us know in the comments. You can find that on Fridays, where we post every week, and thanks for watching.